I've spent years working as a ranger in the desert park, and I've grown accustomed to the harsh conditions and the eerie silence that comes with patrolling this unforgiving landscape. This park is a hidden gem, offering stunning views that few other places can match, but it's not for the faint of heart. In the scorching summer, temperatures can soar past 100 degrees, and the isolation can feel overwhelming. That's why, during the off-season, we only allow visitors during the day. It's just too dangerous for anyone to wander alone, especially when the heat rises and the shadows lengthen. As a non-peace officer for the Ranger District, my days usually revolve around routine tasks maintaining trails, monitoring wildlife, and helping lost hikers. I've come to appreciate the beauty of the desert, the way the sun paints the landscape in vibrant colors at dawn and dusk, the delicate dance of the wildflowers that bloom after rare rains, and the soft whisper of the wind through the cacti. But one summer a few years back was different, and not just because of the sweltering heat. That summer, the heat was unbearable, even for a seasoned ranger like me. It beat down relentlessly, making every step feel like a struggle. My colleagues and I were restless, looking for anything to break the monotony of our long, hot days. We'd spend hours sitting in the office, sipping iced coffee and staring out the window, hoping for some excitement. Then we received some reports that would change everything. Multiple cars had been spotted entering and exiting the south side of the park, and some visitors claimed they saw masked figures running along the roads. At first, we thought it might be college kids filming a project or thrill seekers looking for a rush. We laughed it off, imagining groups of young adults trying to capture some viral moment. But as those sightings continued, a sense of unease settled over us. It felt as if something was off, lurking just beneath the surface. Our supervisor, a grizzled ranger named Alan, called a meeting to discuss the situation. He had been a ranger longer than most of us had been alive, and his stern demeanor commanded respect. We gathered around the map table in the cramped break room, sipping coffee and sharing theories. Some of my colleagues suggested it could be poachers, sneaking in to take advantage of the park's wildlife. Others believed it was just a prank gone wrong, kids trying to scare each other or looking for a thrill. But Alan had a hunch it was something more sinister. "We can't ignore these reports," he said, his voice steady but filled with concern. "I propose we split into patrols to conduct a full survey of the park, covering every trail and road until we get to the bottom of this mystery." There were a lot of us in that off-season, so we had the manpower for a thorough investigation. We couldn't check every back road, but we could cover all the main routes, parking lots and campgrounds, the places that would attract a lot of traffic. I was paired with Rachel, a fellow ranger with a sharp eye for detail and a reputation for being able to spot things most people would miss. As we set off in our truck, armed with water, snacks, and a healthy dose of skepticism, the sun beat down on us like an unrelenting hammer. The radio crackled with static as we drove deeper into the park. Rachel and I shared our theories about the masked figures. I suspected it might be poachers. The masked figures could just be guys in trucks, ready to load up their kills. "There's a lot of game in these valleys," I said, glancing at her. "Sheep, antelope, deer of all kinds." Rachel frowned, her brow furrowed in thought. "I don't know. I think it could be gang activity. This area isn't exactly free of troublemakers. Or maybe it's something else shady." Neither of us had any real evidence, but we chatted about it as we patrolled, trying to make sense of the strange reports. The silence was eerie. No birds chirped, no insects buzzed, just the hum of our engine and the soft crunch of gravel beneath our tires. The landscape stretched out before us, a vast, sun-baked canvas with occasional patches of dry grass and hardy shrubs. We didn't see any signs of life. just the endless expanse of desert, waiting patiently for us to uncover whatever was happening out there. As we stopped at each trailhead, scanning the horizon for any signs of activity, Rachel checked the maps while I looked for footprints or tire tracks, anything that might give us a clue. "What do you think?" I asked, squinting into the distance. "Are we even looking in the right places?" "Hard to say," Rachel replied, frowning at the map. "Maybe we need to focus on the areas closer to the roads. That's where the traffic is likely to be." We were coming up empty, but we remembered there were 20 teams searching the lowlands, so we were just covering one small area. The hours ticked by, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. We still found nothing, no signs of life, no signs of trouble, just the desert waiting for us to uncover whatever was going on. After a while, Rachel and I ran out of ideas. We kept looping through the same trailheads, checking the same back roads, but there was no sign of anything unusual. Our stomachs grumbled, reminding us that we were starting to get hungry and low on fuel. "Let's head back to base," I suggested. "We can refuel ourselves in the truck, and maybe we can get orders for a different area." As we drove back to the station, the radio crackled to life again. Alan's serious voice came through. "All patrols, be advised. We received another report of a masked individual, this time near the old mine shaft. Proceed with caution." Rachel and I exchanged a worried glance. This was getting serious. We hit the gas, our truck speeding towards the mine shaft, adrenaline coursing through our veins as we braced ourselves for whatever lay ahead. When we arrived at the mine shaft, other rangers were already scouring the area, their trucks parked haphazardly around the entrance. We joined the search, our eyes scanning the dusty terrain for any signs of these masked figures. It was a surreal sight. The mine was an old, dilapidated structure, its entrance dark and foreboding. The surrounding ground was littered with debris, remnants of past visitors, cigarette butts, spent shell casings, and various trash that people left behind. "Stay sharp," Alan instructed, his voice steady. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." The atmosphere felt charged, the air thick with tension. Rachel and I moved cautiously, searching for any clues. There was nothing, no sign of the masked individuals, no recent human activity, just the remnants of a long-forgotten past. We approached the mine, peering into the dark hole that seemed to swallow all light. A wooden frame led down into the depths, but the ladder was broken in places, and the darkness beyond was unsettling. "Do you really think anyone could be hiding down there?" Rachel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe, but we're not going down there without backup," I replied firmly. "That place looks dangerous." Rachel nodded, her eyes darting around nervously. "I agree. We should check around the perimeter first." Just as we were about to pack up and head back, Alan called out, "Hold up, folks. Let's leave a couple of rangers behind to keep an eye on the mine for a few hours, just in case." 2 rangers volunteered to stay behind, while the rest of us loaded back into our trucks, ready to return to the main base. As we came around a bend, a voice crackled over the radio. "We've got a vehicle parked behind some rocks at the dog campground. It looks suspicious." Our hearts raced at the urgency in the ranger's voice. We were descending from the steep slope of the mine, and we had a great view of the south side of the park, including several outlying campgrounds. One of the rangers, looking down off the cliff, spotted a vehicle hiding at one of these campgrounds. "Let's check it out," I said, gripping the steering wheel tightly as we quickly reoriented our convoy. The long, slow descent down the hillside felt tense, each bump in the road echoing the uncertainty that hung in the air. This area was notorious for attracting troublemakers who thought they could escape the law by venturing into the park's remote reaches. The campground was a hotspot for illegal activity, and we approached with caution. As we parked, I scanned the area for any signs of life. The trees cast long shadows across the ground, creating pockets of darkness that made it hard to see. "Stay alert," Alan instructed as we disembarked. "We don't know if anyone's in that vehicle, or if they're just waiting for the right moment to make a move." We moved quietly, spreading out to cover more ground. Rachel and I stuck close together, our eyes darting around for any movement. The campground was eerily quiet, the only sounds being the rustling of leaves and our footsteps on the gravel. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, a mix of excitement and fear. Suddenly, a noise caught our attention. We froze, our eyes wide, as we turned toward the sound. It came from the direction of the vehicle, a low mutter, as if someone was talking. "Did you hear that?" Rachel whispered, her voice barely audible. I nodded, tension mounting. "Let's check it out. Stay behind me." We cautiously approached the vehicle, a nondescript SUV parked behind some rocks. The windows were tinted, making it impossible to see inside. As we drew nearer, I noticed the doors were slightly ajar, an unsettling sight in this remote area. "This is definitely suspicious," I muttered, glancing back at Rachel. She nodded, her eyes wide with apprehension. "What should we do?" Alan's voice crackled over the radio again. "I need backup at the dog campground. We have a suspicious vehicle, possible illegal activity. Everyone else, stay back." We moved closer, peering inside the vehicle through the tinted windows. I squinted, trying to catch a glimpse of anything out of the ordinary. Just then, the driver's side door creaked open, and a figure emerged, a tall man wearing a mask. My heart raced as he stepped out, his eyes darting around, clearly on edge. "Everyone, step back," Alan shouted through the radio, and my instincts kicked in. I grabbed Rachel's arm, pulling her behind a tree for cover. "Do you think he saw us?" Rachel whispered, her breath shaky. "I don't know," I replied, peeking around the trunk to get a better look. The masked man was pacing, glancing nervously at the ground, as if searching for something. "Stay quiet," I added, my heart racing. We watched in disbelief as he rummaged through the vehicle, pulling out various items and tossing them onto the ground. My mind raced with questions. Who was he? What was he doing here? Did he have any weapons? Alan's voice crackled through the radio again. "Stay hidden. Backup is on the way." The man continued his frantic search, his movements growing more erratic. Suddenly, he stopped, scanning the area with a wild look in his eyes. My stomach dropped as he turned towards our hiding spot, and I pulled Rachel further behind the tree, holding my breath. The seconds felt like hours as we remained frozen in place, hearts pounding. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a siren echoed in the distance, growing louder as the backup units approached. The masked man's eyes widened in panic, and he sprinted back to the vehicle, throwing himself inside and slamming the door shut. "Now!" Alan shouted over the radio, and we sprang into action. The other rangers converged on the area, weapons drawn as they approached the SUV. I felt a surge of adrenaline as we moved forward, ready to confront the situation head-on. The masked man started the SUV, the engine roaring to life as he prepared to flee. The sound echoed through the quiet park, sending shivers down my spine. Alan signaled for the rangers to take cover, and I pressed myself against the rough bark of a tree, my heart racing. The SUV sped away, kicking up clouds of dust behind it, almost like a scene from a movie. "We need to catch him," I shouted, adrenaline pumping through my veins like fire. Alan and several other rangers jumped into their vehicles, quickly pursuing the fleeing SUV down the winding dirt road. Rachel and I hopped back into our truck, heartbeats syncing with the rhythm of the chase. The thrill of the moment was exhilarating, and I felt a surge of determination as we raced through the rugged terrain, dodging rocks and dips in the road. My senses were on high alert, every bump jolted me, reminding me of the danger we were up against. The masked man swerved wildly, clearly desperate to lose us. Dust filled the air, obscuring our view, but Alan's vehicle stayed hot on his trail. "We can't let him escape," Rachel urged, gripping the dashboard tightly, her knuckles turning white as we bounced along the uneven road. I could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. Just as I thought we were gaining ground, the masked man took a sharp turn off the main road, heading deeper into the park. "He's trying to lose us in the backcountry," I shouted, determination surging within me like a wave crashing against a cliff. Alan's voice crackled over the radio. "Stay on him. He can't outrun us in this terrain." His words fueled my resolve. We were a team, and we weren't going to let him slip away. We followed closely, navigating through the winding roads and steep hills. The masked man seemed frantic, taking reckless turns and speeding over bumps. My heart raced as I focused on keeping our truck steady. "We can't let him get away," I shouted, adrenaline surging like a tidal wave. After several tense minutes, we approached a clearing where the masked man had slowed down. Alan's vehicle pulled ahead, blocking his path like a wall. I could see the masked man's panic rising as he slammed on the brakes, his SUV skidding to a stop just short of crashing into Alan's truck. The dust swirled around us, creating a hazy barrier between us and the masked man. "Get out of the vehicle," Alan shouted, stepping out with his weapon drawn, flanked by several rangers. His voice rang with authority, but I could see the tension etched on his face. The masked man hesitated, glancing around as if weighing his options. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," Alan warned, his voice steady like a calm before a storm. "We have you surrounded." The air crackled with electricity, the kind that precedes a thunderstorm, and I held my breath, waiting for his next move. Realizing he had no way out, the masked man finally opened the door and stepped out, hands raised. I couldn't believe it. We had finally caught him. Relief flooded over me like a cool breeze on a hot day. The tension that had hung in the air for so long began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of triumph. As he was taken into custody, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. We had uncovered something that could have turned dangerous, and I was grateful we acted quickly. My heart slowly returned to a normal rhythm as the reality of our success sank in. Later, as we gathered around to debrief, Alan explained what we had discovered. The masked man had been involved in a string of illegal activities, including poaching and trafficking stolen goods. He was part of a larger operation that had been eluding authorities for far too long. "Great work, everyone," Alan said, a rare smile breaking through his usually stoic demeanor. "Today, we not only protected this park, but also put an end to a dangerous situation." His words brought a sense of pride to the group, and I felt a sense of camaraderie swell within me. As we drove back to the station, the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the landscape. I couldn't help but reflect on the day's events. I had come to this park seeking solitude and the beauty of nature, but instead, I found myself in the middle of a thrilling chase that felt straight out of a movie. But more than that, I felt proud. Proud to be part of a team that protected this land, proud to confront danger head-on, and proud to serve the community. The desert was still a hidden gem, but now I knew that its secrets could be more than just beautiful landscapes. They could also hold darkness. As the sun sank lower in the sky, painting it with hues of orange and pink, I looked out over the vast expanse of the desert. I knew I'd continue to patrol this land, keeping it safe for all who ventured here. After all, every day in the park was a new adventure, and I was ready for whatever came next. Later, we arrived at Dog Campground. It was a place we called that because there was always some dog roaming around, barking and sniffing the ground. Most of the time, it was harmless, but you could never be too sure. There were stories of tweakers and all sorts of weird people hanging around the fringes. As we entered the campsite, our eyes scanned the area, taking in the scattered trash and abandoned gear that littered the ground. The car was parked behind a cluster of rocks, partially hidden from view. We spread out, our boots crunching on the gravel as we began to investigate. The first thing we noticed was that the car was inoperable. It was a white and black vehicle, burned so badly that nothing remained but a twisted frame. None of us wanted to approach it, obviously. Something serious and illegal had happened. Alan immediately called in the local sheriff's department, requesting deputies to come right away. Then he sent a pair of us back to the district building so we could lead the lawmen back to the scene of whatever crime we had just discovered. The air was heavy with an ominous silence, the only sound being the creaking of trees and the distant hum of a fly buzzing around our heads. Rachel and I walked the perimeter, our eyes scanning the ground for any signs of activity. The sun continued to beat down on us, casting long shadows across the dusty terrain. Nobody wanted to approach that car, so we just poked around, looking for any other clues. We found more bullet casings and a big chopping log with strange cuts in it, along with dark stains that raised our suspicions. We didn't know what to make of that, but every step felt like a slow-motion nightmare. I had an uneasy feeling, as if we were being watched by unseen eyes. The trees loomed over us, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching out to snatch us away. As we approached the car, I noticed it was old, rusty, and covered in a thick layer of dust. The windows were blown out, leaving jagged shards like teeth in the frame. I tried the door handle, but it was melted in place. Rachel and I exchanged another worried glance, our instincts screaming that something was off. We began to circle the car, searching for any signs of entry or exit, and that's when I saw it ahead resting in the front seat. My blood ran cold, and I froze, hollering for everyone to stop. They all halted in place, tension thickening the air. Alan slowly crept up to my side, and my heart began to race as I called out to the others. "We've got something here." "What is it?" Alan asked, his voice steady but edged with concern. I pointed down to what I was looking at. Alan peeked over my shoulder and sucked in a breath, taking a few steps back as he processed the scene. He could see more than I could. Just one more step was all it took, and I could see the corpse for what it was, not just burned to a crisp, but methodically dissected like a frog in a 6th grade science lab. It was hard to tell what was what, but it looked like someone had chopped the guy apart. We all retreated from the car, desperation rising in our chests. We needed the sheriff to arrive, but they were still an hour out, and we felt like we were in a nightmare that wouldn't end. I wish I could say we got the answers and relief we desired when the sheriff finally arrived. They taped off the area and began taking photos, but when we explained the body, their entire demeanor seemed to change. They dismissed us, saying they would reach out if they had further questions. When we came back to check the scene the next day, the vehicle was gone, along with all the trash from the area. We received the official report a few weeks later, and all of us were stunned by what we read. The conclusion was suicide. The man had been seatbelted into the vehicle and then set it on fire. But before that, someone had laid him out and removed his arms and legs with a wood chopping axe, probably the chopping log we saw with the dark stains on top. So how did he cut off his own limbs, climb into the car, put on a seatbelt, and then light it on fire? Alan, the lead for the district, said there was a lot of illegal drug trafficking in the area, and it had to be connected to this case. No other explanation made sense. It also explained why the sheriff wasn't eager to investigate. There wouldn't be any leads in a case like this. This became a pivotal moment for our department that year. Many people moved on to different parks or other jobs altogether. Murder at the edge of the world wasn't in the job description, and a lot of us felt like we were moments away from our own deaths that day. But not me. I stuck with the district and still patrol that harsh desert today. I have many cool, weird stories, but this is definitely the darkest thing that ever happened on the job. As I drive through the park now, memories of that day linger like shadows, reminders of the darkness that can sometimes seep into the beauty of nature. Each corner holds a story, a whisper of something lurking just beneath the surface. But I remain committed to this land and to protecting those who seek its beauty. Every day is a new adventure, and while I know darkness can exist, I also believe in the light. I'm ready for whatever comes next.